They say the fairground's been closed for 20 years. Rust on the gates, weeds through the pavement, rides left to rot. But if you stand near the fence at night, you'll hear it. Metal groaning, lights buzzing, the Ferris wheel turning slow and steady, and sometimes the seats aren't empty. My name is the Tales Keeper, and this is Nightmare for Giggles. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Tonight we're heading past the chain-link fence to a place that should have stayed forgotten, the abandoned amusement park. Locals whisper about the Ferris wheel, the one ride that never stopped, and when it turns, you might not be the only one riding. This is the Ferris wheel that still turns. The fence Mark had heard the story a dozen times. Kids at school whispered about the fairground on the edge of town, the one that closed after the accident 20 years ago. They said the rides were still standing, rusted, broken, but that the Ferris wheel still moved. No wind, no power, yet it turned in the night, carrying passengers nobody could see. He never believed it. Legends were for kids, he thought, ways to scare each other into silence during sleepovers. But then his friends made it a dare. Sneak inside, take a picture of the Ferris wheel, and prove he wasn't a coward. So here he was, at nearly midnight, standing at the chain-link fence. Rust climbed the metal like veins, and thick padlocks clung to the gates, unmoved for years. Beyond them, the park was a graveyard of fun. Tilt-a-whirl frozen in place, bumper cars swallowed by weeds, food stalls sagging under rot. Mark pressed his face to the wire. The air smelled of rust and something sweet like old candy rotting in the heat. The silence was wrong, too thick, too heavy. Then he heard it. A creak, slow, heavy. His eyes darted to the far end of the park, where the Ferris wheel loomed against the sky. He held his breath as one of the seats dipped, another rising. The entire wheel shifted, groaning as though invisible hands were working the gears. Mark stepped back from the fence, a chill dragging down his spine. His friend's laughter rang in his head, but it didn't sound funny anymore. The dare was clear. Touch the Ferris wheel, take a photo, and come back. Easy. Mark scanned the fence until he found a section where the metal sagged inward. He climbed, sneakers scraping, the fence rattling under his weight. For a moment he thought it would give way and throw him back, but he swung over, landing hard on cracked pavement. Inside, the air felt different. Cold, like he'd stepped out of summer and into late autumn. His breath didn't fog, but he swore the temperature had dropped. He pulled out his flashlight. The beam cut across peeling paint and old signs. "Fun for the whole family." One banner still read, letters curling and half torn. It swayed, though no wind touched it. Mark walked slow, every step echoing. He felt exposed, like the rides and stalls were watching. The Ferris wheel groaned again, metal crying out. His light swept across it. A seat near the top swayed back and forth, harder than the others. Too hard, as if someone had just sat down. Mark's mouth went dry. He told himself it was the wind. That's what it had to be. But then the bulbs along the Ferris wheel flickered. One sparked to life, then another. Strings of colored bulbs buzzing faintly as though electricity still flowed through the rusted wires. Red, yellow, blue. The whole wheel lit up, glowing against the black sky. Mark stumbled backward, heart slamming in his chest. There was no power here. The fairground had been abandoned for decades. He snapped a picture with his phone, hands shaking. The screen glitched, freezing for a second before the image appeared. In the photo, the seats weren't empty. Shapes sat in them. Dark silhouettes, human-sized, hunched as if leaning forward to watch him. Mark's pulse pounded in his ears. He looked back up at the wheel. The seats swayed gently, creaking in rhythm, as if the figures in them were shifting their weight. One of the shapes seemed to turn its head. Then came the music, faint at first, like a breeze carrying a memory. A broken tune, hollow and warped, the kind of carnival calliope you'd expect from a carousel. It played in stuttering notes, off-key but unmistakable. Mark spun in place, flashlight beam shaking. The sound didn't come from one ride, it came from all of them, from everywhere. The Ferris wheel creaked louder, turning with more purpose. Seats rose, pausing at the top before swinging down. Mark aimed his light up. The silhouettes in the seats were clearer now. Dark forms sitting rigid, heads angled downward, watching. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with shaking hands. A text from one of his friends lit the screen. "Get out." Mark's breath caught. He hadn't told them he'd made it in. Another text followed. "We see you." The Ferris wheel groaned to a stop. One of the seats at the bottom rocked gently, chains clinking as it swayed. It was empty, waiting. Mark stood frozen, phone clenched in his fist. The music played louder, the notes warped and echoing. His flashlight beam caught the seat rocking back and forth as though a hand was patting it, inviting him to sit. Above, the silhouettes shifted, heads tilted, shoulders angled down. Watching. Mark whispered, "No, no way." But his feet edged closer anyway, like the air itself was pulling him. The ride creaked once more. The chains rattled. The seat swayed harder, impatient. And the wheel kept turning. Mark backed away from the waiting seat, his breath quick and shallow. The park pressed in around him, every shadow alive, every creak of metal a heartbeat. He whispered to himself, "It's the wind. It's just the wind." But then he heard it, footsteps, slow, steady, crunching against broken pavement. He spun, flashlight darting across the cracked midway. Empty. The sound stopped when his light landed, but as soon as he turned back toward the Ferris wheel, the crunch returned. This time, closer. Mark's chest tightened. The rides loomed like broken teeth, silhouettes stretching in the dark. He pointed his light at the bumper cars, at the carousel with its peeling horses. Nothing. But when he swung it back toward the Ferris wheel, his throat locked. One of the seats that had been empty now held a shape. Dark. Still. And the wheel was moving again. The music shifted. The faint carnival tune deepened, growing clearer, like an organ creaking back to life. Mark's flashlight beam swept across the carousel, its paint flaking, horses frozen mid-gallop. Then, with a shudder, the ride lit up. Bulbs flickered around its crown. The music sharpened, pulling the same broken melody into focus. The horses began to move, jerking in uneven rhythm as if they hadn't been ridden in decades. Mark's breath hitched. He stumbled backward, but his eyes locked on the figures. Not the horses. The riders. Shadows hunched in the saddles. Arms stiff, heads bowed. The carousel spun slow at first, then faster, laughter echoing faintly though no mouths moved. Mark clutched his phone, snapping a photo. The image blurred. On the screen, the shadows had faces. Empty eyes, grins too wide. He dropped the phone. The carousel slowed, the shadows tilting their heads as though they knew he'd seen. Mark's heart pounded as he stumbled toward the old tunnel ride. Its sign still hung crooked, the Tunnel of Love. The painted hearts had long faded into gray scars. The water was gone, the boat's rotten husks, but the tunnel itself glowed faintly, pulsing with dim red light. He should have turned back. He knew it. But the whispers came again. Come closer. Ride with us." Mark stepped inside. The air was heavy, wet, like a breath held too long. His flashlight beam barely cut through the dark. Shapes lined the tunnel walls, figures carved into plaster, leaning toward the path. Their faces had melted with time, leaving hollow sockets where eyes should be, and as he moved deeper, the sockets filled with faint black light. He staggered out the other side, gasping, the Ferris wheel groaning louder behind him. His phone buzzed from the ground where he dropped it. Mark scrambled to pick it up, fingers shaking. The screen was cracked, the display flickering, but there was a call coming through. Theo, calling, his little brother's name. Mark swore under his breath. Theo was at home, asleep. This had to be a trick. The call went to voicemail, and his own voice came through the speaker. "Mark, I'm stuck. I'm on the ride. You need to help me. Hurry." The Ferris wheel screeched, metal screaming. Mark looked up, phone still buzzing in his hand. One of the silhouettes near the top raised its arm, waving. The Ferris wheel slowed, groaning to a halt. The seat at the bottom rocked again, chains rattling as though someone had just climbed out. Mark's knees went weak. His brother's voice echoed in his head. "Help me. Hurry." The seat rocked harder. The music grew louder, echoing across the empty park. Mark stepped forward, every instinct screaming to stop. But his body moved anyway. His hand reached toward the cold chain, his foot hovering above the platform. Above him, every silhouette turned in unison, black eyes catching faint sparks of light. The Ferris wheel began to turn again, slow, patient, waiting. Mark's foot landed on the platform. The Ferris wheel groaned, chains rattling as the empty seat steadied itself in front of him. He told himself he wouldn't sit. He couldn't, but the air pressed down like invisible hands, urging him closer. The phone buzzed again in his pocket. His brother's voice, faint, broken. "Help me, please." Mark's chest ached. His hand shook as he reached for the cold metal bar of the seat. He lowered himself into it, the chain clinking as if locking him in. The ride lurched. The wheel began to move, dragging him upward. Mark's stomach flipped. The ground dropped beneath him, the lights of the wheel buzzing brighter. Around him, the silhouettes sat rigid in their seats, heads slowly turning toward him as he rose higher and higher. One of them leaned forward, mouth opening wider than it should. No sound came out, just the groan of the wheel, carrying him into the night sky. From the top of the wheel, the fairground sprawled below him. Broken rides, dead grass, cracked pavement stretching into shadows. But there was something else. Beyond the fence, where the town should have been, he saw only dark fields stretching endless. No lights, no roads, no houses. The park wasn't in his town anymore. Mark gripped the bar of his seat, his knuckles white. The silhouettes around him leaned closer, their heads tilting in unison. His phone buzzed. A text lit the screen. "Look down." Mark hesitated, then forced himself to look. On the cracked pavement below, dozens more shadows gathered at the base of the wheel, standing, waiting. The wheel creaked, pulling him down toward them. The closer the seat lowered, the clearer the figures became. They weren't just shadows anymore. They had faces, pale and waxy, their eyes hollow pits of black. They crowded the base of the Ferris wheel, arms reaching upward like worshippers. Their mouths opened wide, whispering in voices that bled together. "Join us. Stay with us. Forever." Mark's heart pounded. He kicked against the seat, trying to stand, but the chain held him fast. The ride slowed, his seat dipping toward the crowd. their arms stretched higher, fingertips brushing his shoes. Mark screamed, "Stop!" But the wheel creaked on, deaf to his plea. Above him, the silhouettes in the seats swayed gently, as though enjoying the show. The Ferris wheel jolted, stopping suddenly just above the waiting crowd. Mark's chest heaved as he tried to pull free, but the chain tightened. Below, the pale figures stared up, their black eyes glowing faintly in the dark. One by one, they stepped back, clearing space. Mark frowned, confused, until the ground split. A dark crack opened in the pavement, wide enough for the shadows to slip inside. The air reeked of rust and rot. The figures filed down into the darkness, vanishing, leaving only whispers echoing up the crack. "Ride with us. Ride forever." The Ferris wheel groaned again, tilting his seat downward, lowering him toward the opening. Mark's hands gripped the chain until his palms burned. He couldn't go down there. He wouldn't. The voices pressed in, soft and endless. "Say yes. Stay. Forever." He clenched his jaw, shaking his head. "No." The wheel groaned angrily, metal screaming as it jerked to a halt. The lights flickered, buzzing with fury. The silhouettes above him turned their heads sharply, their faces twisting with disappointment. Mark shouted louder, "I said no!" The crack in the pavement snapped shut, echoing like thunder. The shadows vanished with it. The Ferris wheel shuddered violently, the seat swinging hard. Mark's stomach lurched as the ride spun faster and faster, dragging him higher into the night. The wheel wasn't letting him go. Act 16. The Spin. The Ferris wheel screeched, metal grinding like it hadn't moved in decades, yet it spun faster and faster. Mark clung to the bar of his seat, knuckles raw, the world blurring into streaks of rust and neon. The silhouettes in the other seats swayed with emotion. They didn't clutch the chains or fight against gravity. They leaned forward, heads tilted, eyes fixed on him. Mark shouted into the wind, "Stop! Let me off." The lights buzzed brighter, bulbs popping one by one, showering sparks into the air. The music warped, calliope notes stretched and broken, as if the fair itself was unraveling. His phone buzzed in his pocket again. Against all fear, he pulled it out. The screen showed his own reflection, but his eyes were black. The wheel jerked hard, hurling him against the seat. He realized then, this wasn't just a ride. It was choosing, and it had chosen him. The ride slowed just enough to let him catch his breath. Mark's body ached, his vision swimming. The wheel groaned, and a seat beside him, empty seconds ago, was now filled. A figure sat slumped there, pale skin, hollow eyes, a mouth stretched into a grin too wide to belong to anything human. It turned its head toward him, slowly, deliberately. Mark tore his gaze away, staring at the ground rushing past below. The park blurred, no longer abandoned rides and cracked pavement. Now it was endless dark fields stretching forever. The figure leaned closer, its grin inches from his ear. "Stay," it whispered, though its lips barely moved. Mark shook his head violently. "No, I'm not yours." The wheel shrieked like metal in pain, swinging his seat violently as if trying to throw him off. The ride tilted, his seat rising higher, the world spinning until he couldn't tell where the ground was. His chest heaved. His grip was slipping. And then he saw it, an opening. The wheel slowed just long enough to swing his seat over the fence. The ground below wasn't the cracked fairground anymore. It was grass, real grass, a way out. Mark's heart slammed in his chest. He knew what he had to do. He unclipped the chain, muscles burning as he fought against the pull of the wheel. The seat rocked, throwing him side to side. He whispered one word, barely audible over the grind of the ride. "Jump!" And he leapt. The world blurred. He hit the ground hard, pain jolting through his body, air knocked from his lungs. But he was outside the fence again, staring up at the silent Ferris wheel. Dark. Still. Mark staggered to his feet, knees shaking. The park loomed behind him, quiet now. No music, no lights, just rusted rides and dead silence. He limped down the road, each step a victory. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A new message. From Theo. "Where are you?" Relief washed over him. He typed back quickly, "I'm fine. I'm coming home." The message sent. But before he could pocket the phone, another text came through. "We're still waiting." His chest froze. The number wasn't Theo's anymore. It was his own. The return mark stumbled faster, heart pounding, the fairground shrinking behind him. But no matter how far he walked, the lights kept flickering in the distance. He turned once, against his better judgment. The Ferris wheel glowed faintly, bulbs buzzing to life one by one. The seats swayed, the silhouettes shifting, their heads turning to face him even from miles away. The wheel groaned, metal grinding, slow and steady, and through the still night air, carried soft as a whisper, he heard it. One more ride. Mark's breath caught. His feet refused to move. Because deep down, he knew he hadn't escaped. The ride never ended.